Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm glad to have with me for the first time Jim Payne. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Dyna-CERT, Inc., and that's a company that I've brought to your attention a couple of times over the last couple of weeks. It's a company I'm very excited about. It has a great future ahead of it, I believe, which is why I've recommended it to my subscribers to Jay Taylor's Gold, Energy, and Tech Stocks. Well, this company designs, engineers, manufactures, tests, distributes, and installs transportable hydrogen generator product and aftermarket products, and is used in reducing fuel consumption in commercial vehicles. And it really also reduces carbon emissions very significantly. Now, these are things that should be getting the investors' attention, and not a lot of people seem to be aware of this company yet. It has just sort of been busy building its business and not talking too much about what it's doing, but it has some remarkable results, and it looks to me like this could be a huge winner, so that's why I'm really excited about Dyna-CERT. The company trades in Toronto under the symbol DYA. You can buy it down in the United States, as I have, under the symbol DYFSF. Recently selling at around 10 cents a share, and it gives it a market cap of only around $20 million, which I think is really exciting given the upside that I think I see for this company. Anyway, to learn more about it, Jim is with me today. Thanks for joining me, Jim.
Thank you, Jay. It's a pleasure.
Really good to have you with me. You know, I want to ask you about the test. You recently had some tests, well, recently a couple of years back, had tests with Pepsi vehicles, and it significantly reduced the amount of fuel consumption and reduced the hydrogen or reduced the carbon emissions very significantly. But first, before we get to that, I'd like to ask you to explain in layman's terms how Dyna-CERT's hydrogen generator works.
Sure. Well, it's a very unique process. I mean, it is electrolysis system, but it is a very unique electrolysis system which actually separates the gases, so we're producing pure hydrogen and pure oxygen from distilled water. The nice thing is it produces it on demand. There's at no given time that you are storing hydrogen. But what it does is it introduces hydrogen and oxygen into the combustion chamber of an engine at different quantities and different intervals. Now, there's something that we found, through working with combustion experts and rocket scientists and such, that, if we could produce pure hydrogen and pure oxygen separated, feed them at different times, different quantities, it really does make a huge difference in the combustion of an engine. What it does is it actually increases the flame spread 9 to 10 times. By doing that, it's very interesting. People think, well, then your engine's burning hotter. But reality is the engine is firing hotter, but it is actually running cooler. And this is something that has been proven. The other thing is, and which really, really, separates us from everybody and has, really made a huge difference in the last few years, is that the way we produce it and the way it's injected, because we have come to understand that depending on road conditions, depending on weather conditions, depending on humidity, depending on altitude, there are so many factors that play into this. And there's times that you need more hydrogen and less oxygen. There's times that you need just the opposite. You need more oxygen and less hydrogen to get that more complete burn. And the nice thing is, with getting a more complete burn, it is increasing the power, it's increasing the torque of an engine, it's reducing the fuel consumption on an average 10 to 15%. And it's reducing the carbon footprint. I mean, we are literally reducing the toxic gases that are in the emissions anywhere from 30 to 40%, clean across the board. This is something that we've had proven and tested and third-party accredited, and we're very excited about it.
Well, and rightfully so. You have a fair amount of testing that's been done. Talk to us about the testing program. I understand it took place with Pepsi-Cola trucks in around the Detroit area, perhaps. Can you talk about when were those tests conducted, and what were the results?
This was our early product. Once we had, like I said, we brought in a rocket scientist to confirm what we needed, and he was one that came out, with where we needed the hydrogen and the oxygen separated. He developed the science behind the technology we've got today. So the initial product, with that science behind it, Pepsi, stepped up. They bought 200 units. We did a 1-year study with them, or they actually did a 1-year study running 100 trucks with and 100 trucks without. They publicly put out in their own Green Fleet magazine that they were they reduced their fuel consumption by 14.8%. That was an average on 100 trucks over a 1-year study. I mean, they had trucks getting much greater. Of course, they had some trucks that weren't getting as much, but as an average on 100 trucks, 14.8%, which is huge. You talk to any trucking company, the largest fixed cost is fuel.
So that's a substantial savings potentially for the trucks, but what about complying with environmental requirements these days? We're hearing more and more about the need to cut down carbon emissions. It's my understanding that it's also been proven that your technology cuts down, 30% or so of carbon emissions. Is that right?
Between 30 and 40% of the different toxic gases, so yes, we are reducing the carbon footprint very significantly. And reality is, Jay, we put this out with Pepsi, and like I said, that was the early model. Then we spent, the better part of a couple of years perfecting it, commercializing it. We put units out all over the globe, being tested, and today we are in the final stages of having this third-party accredited validation because as a public company, Pepsi, as far as I'm concerned, an end user is the best testimonial you can get. But it's not something as a public company we can't use that for advertising. We can't use that, that is, you need to be third-party accredited. And we're in that final stages right now. We have units out there that are being tracked literally by computer. And at the end of the day, we will have third-party proper accreditation along with a white paper on our technology. And that was our ultimate goal, to take this thing into the final commercialization, to get that, and then move into the sales phase. And that's where we're at today.
All right, so you needed that third-party verification, I guess, is what you were, sort of what was holding up and what has held up the sales. Is that right? When was the Pepsi study, the Pepsi test done?
The Pepsi study was done in 2012 and 2013. Very, very positive study. Now, like I said, that was the early stage product. Reality is, Jay, at that point, the science behind the product was great. At that point, it was not really a commercialized, viable unit. It was faced with challenges. Pepsi was great to work with. We actually had commands to chase them around the globe, make sure everything was right, and repair or, make any changes that needed to be done. Fantastic study. But at the same time, it gave us the knowledge and of what we had to do to get this thing, really commercially viable. And at that point, I literally brought in a group of engineers and we spent 2 years getting this thing right, getting it perfected and putting it out all over the place, having units tested and making sure that they've got the longevity, that they're working well, and yeah, so now we are, like I said, we are literally just at the stage. Our goal is by the end of the first quarter of this year, we are, really into the major sales phase. We've already, right now, we took our first purchase order of 50 units. They are being installed as we speak. We've had some fantastic results, and actually some of the first install we did. This gentleman owns 350 trucks. He ran this unit for a couple of weeks. He just came back and said, how quick can I order 350 units and get it on my fleet?
Oh, okay. So you're getting the orders right now, and the third-party verification will be completed when?
It will be completed within the next, 30 to 45 days. Yeah.
30 to 40. So within the first quarter of this year, you should have that. But in the meantime, you've got orders coming in, significant numbers of orders coming in. You said 350 units, this one party?
That is correct. Now, and what we told them and what we are doing, we are currently increasing our capacity here. Our goal is by the end of the first quarter, we are manufacturing and having 2,000 units a month out the door.
All right. Can you give our listeners some sense of of an idea of what sort of profit margins, or are you free to talk about that at this stage, or is it too early to do that?
No, we have a very good understanding of what our profit margins are, and reality is, you look at sales. I mean, you look between our wholesale cost. If we put out 10,000 units, our sales at that point is $67,500,000, and then we're basically working on a 60% gross margin gross margin on that.
60% on that, $67.5 million. Interesting. Very substantial potential. Then let me ask you about, from the buyer's point of view, how long would it take, let's say, an average Pepsi truck to get their investment back?
At 14.8%, I mean, their payback is 7 to 8 months. We try and be very, very conservative. We tell people you're looking at 8 to 10% fuel savings. I'd much rather under-promise deliver. At that, their payback is less than 1 year.
Okay, so they might run these trucks 2-3 years or whatever.
Right. Our unit, our unit is good for 3 years, and they would need to go through, refurbishing, but which is not a costly ordeal. But and the typical truck, I mean, you get into the large fleets and that. Typically, they operate their trucks for a 3-year term.
I'm wondering, Jim, in this low-cost fuel environment, if that might be an impediment. In other words, phrasing the question the other way, if we were in, say, $100 oil and much higher diesel cost, or whatever fuels are used by these vehicles would be much higher, wouldn't that be more of an incentive to go after this hard than at this time when there's low fuel costs?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, Jay. I've actually just recently talked to a couple of large fleets, and they said, Jim, you got to understand, we spend between $10,000 and $15,000 when we get new trucks just to change the tires and put some airfoils and stuff on it to gain 1 to 2% fuel savings. Fuel is still, without a doubt, their number one cost. It is their largest cost, and if they can reduce their fuel savings by 10 to 15%, they've just increased their margins significantly.
Yeah. And probably the biggest savings on fuel opportunity that they've seen in some time, I suppose.
Absolutely. Now, the other interesting thing, is, and this is something it's very difficult to put a hard number on. I mean, to put a fixed cost on or a return on investment on. But reality is, and this has been proven, and by the introduction of hydrogen and oxygen to the engine runs so much cleaner. They literally pulled the heads off 2 trucks at the end of a year. A truck typically just burning diesel fuel. Without this, you need to take a chisel to scrape the carbon buildup inside the engine, off the heads, off the valves. With the introduction of hydrogen and oxygen, they pulled the heads off, and they literally took a white rag and wiped it clean. The other very interesting thing was there was a test on the engine oil. 2 trucks, running the same mileage at typical oil change. Standard truck, 8% soot content. I mean, it's the soot that breaks down the engine oil and starts wearing out the engine. With our technology on there, it was less than 1% soot content in the oil. So there is so many added values and added features that, including the increased torque and the increased power, and that you really can't put a true monetary value on.
To what extent do you think the carbon emissions reduction comes into play in making this more attractive? I mean, are there regulations out there with these commercial vehicles that require improvements? Places like California, I suppose that might be true, or
there is everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, certainly everywhere within North America. You get into Europe, and that, yes, there's huge conditions they've got to meet. Currently, the trucks are having to add, and even the new trucks. They are coming out with all these different added features, where they're adding urea and everything like that to an engine to try and meet the emission standards. This is actually robbing them of fuel efficiency, and it's robbing them of power, where, by this technology, we're not there yet. I really do believe that, a lot of these added products that are on trucks today, they will be able to eliminate. I have talked to more truckers. You take these urea systems and that, they hate them. It is costing them so much downtime and, and problems. It's unbelievable.
Jim, we're talking about commercial trucks at this point in time, but I know there are other markets that you have your eyes on as well. What about automobiles? Regular cars like my Honda that I drive.
Well, the reality is, Jay, the automobiles was not a market that we were looking at. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden in the last few months, we've all heard and read about certain car manufacturers that are facing some real serious challenges with their diesel engines.
Right.
Where, they have not been meeting the emission standards. And so we have very quickly built a prototype, and we are actually testing it today on one of those specific diesel engines and a diesel car. We really do believe that, just with the introduction of the hydrogen and oxygen, it's going to solve their problem. We haven't verified that yet. This is a process that we're going through, but it has worked in every larger diesel engine. I can't imagine why it's not going to do the same on the smaller diesel engine. At the end of the day, if this proves to do what we believe it's going to do, it could be a godsend for certain companies out there.
So also I know that you've done some things with the power plants in more remote areas of the world. Could you talk about that for a moment?
Absolutely. We've actually got an ongoing project with, it's actually a Wärtsilä engine. It's Wärtsilä builds the largest engines in the world. And, this burns heavy oil. I mean, this oil is so thick and so dirty that they have to preheat it in the warm climates even to get it to flow into an engine so they can burn it. And we have a project going on, and this has, they said, show us 5% fuel savings. That 5% fuel savings on, now this is a very large engine, it's a 10,000 horsepower engine. At 5% fuel savings, and this is a $500,000 unit. This is not a $10,000 unit like a transport truck. At a $500,000, at 5% fuel savings, their payback is less than 1 year.
In less than 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once again, their biggest challenge with these engines, because of the oil that they're burning, is, the carbon buildup inside them is so drastic. That they have to continually be shutting the cylinder down and scraping the carbon just to keep them running.
Wow. So there's costs that are involved with that, then downtime and all that could be eliminated potentially. Yeah.
And also, that's one specific one where we had a third-party company come in, and we got proven. We've got all the proof and the stats where, when I say 30 to 40%, this reduced their toxic gases, in their output of their emissions by 30 to 40%.
Wow.
Across the board. Now, right now, they are not yet being so governed, for emissions. Although this is, this is something that is really, really coming to the forefront today. The other nice thing with this is, Jay, is with this engine type, this is a direct conduit for us into the shipping area.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We look at shipping. We look at rail. This in itself is another huge, huge market. And I found it very interesting back a couple of months ago, there was a big article went out talking about container ships. And, this is something that I found staggering, but one container ship puts out the equivalent to 50 million cars a year in pollution.
Wow.
And right now it's not being governed.
Incredible. I would imagine if they can reduce the amount of fuel that they're loading on a ship to take a ship, let's say, from North America to Europe, that would also mean they could have more space to put cargo on there and get revenues from that. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right. It's funny. After we got the first results on this Wärtsilä engine, Wärtsilä themselves have been tracking this, and we actually got a call here from two of the largest shipbuilders in Korea. Matter of fact, these companies I didn't even know they made ships. One of them I knew made TVs, the other I knew made cell phones, but ended up they're the largest shipbuilder. And I had a conversation with them. And they were saying to me, we're talking 10% fuel savings. I said, 10% fuel savings, it pays for itself. And they said, Jim, you have no idea. 10% fuel savings, they said, our number one largest cargo is our fuel. Huh. They said, if we can decrease that by 10%, we can increase our payload by 10%, and that's worth more to us than the fuel savings.
Incredible. Well, this is really, really an exciting story. I know you just recently raised about $1.5 million. Jim, was that in order to provide working capital to start delivering some of those units, hydrogen units?
That was exactly part of it, Jay. I mean, it was. I mean, like I said, like we're going through this validation process. I mean, this validation process is a costly process. You know, this is something nobody else has ever done in this field. It's something that we felt was critical. You know, I believe this was the most important step we've ever taken with this company. But yes, without a doubt, I mean, that's helping us fund that. It's also helping us. Like we are currently hiring more people. We just brought on a new general manager just a few weeks ago, and this gentleman worked with us as a consultant for the past 2 years. He is an MBA, He is a PEng. He worked for Shell Oil. He went and opened up countries and that for them. Understands this field, but he's also very, very well connected to a couple of the largest OEMs in the trucking field and understands these engines inside out. So he was, like I said, working with us as a consultant. We have just hired him full-time as the general manager. You know, he is really going to help us move forward. We are currently hiring more staff, and we are increasing our capacity and building out an additional 10,000 square feet here.
And you're located in Toronto or outside of Toronto, I believe?
We are located in Toronto, just at the north end of Toronto, we're literally just off of the 400 and the 401. So perfect location.
Yeah. Well, Jim, I suppose what we should, I would imagine what I want to watch anyway is your financial reports and other reports that you're putting out in terms of units of sales and that sort of thing. What should investors be looking for? What drivers should we be looking for to keep up to date with what's going on in the company?
Well, sales are certainly, I mean, that's what everybody looks for. It's you know, everybody looks for sales. Once you start seeing sales, you know, they know things are moving forward. The trucking industry is certainly, you know, our low-lying fruit. It is what's going to capitalize the company and give us the revenue stream and the capital to move things forward in all these other areas. You know, like I said, by the end of the first quarter, you know, our ultimate goal is that we're putting out 2,000 units a month with the capacity from there to increase that to 4,000 or 6,000 units a month by just putting in the second and third shift. I do believe that, you know, this is going to outgrow our capacity or our desire to be the manufacturing, and we've already, you know, in talks with some of the largest auto part manufacturers here in North America that have a very strong appetite of manufacturing for us.
Okay. So you may that would help to reduce the amount of capital you would need to raise to keep growing your business. But you have the ability to do 2,000 a month now where you're at, you feel?
So yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well,
on a single shift.
On a single shift, and so you double shift and go to 4,000?
Correct.
I see. Or even 6 around the clock, possibly.
That's right.
7 days a week, or do you give a day of rest in there?
We will give a day of rest.
Okay, that's a good thing, I think. Anything else? I mean, what could go wrong here? I mean, everything you're telling me sounds really good, but I know, you know, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I've been around a long time, and I know there are always hiccups when you're starting a new business, when you're growing, and so on and so forth. What are some of the risks that investors might want to be aware of and keep an eye out for? What keeps you awake at night, I guess, is another way of asking the question.
What keeps me awake at night? Well, for the last few years, I mean, it was to get this product right and get it tested and get it commercialized. You know, I've been around a long time too, Jay, and I'm no fool. I understand that, you know, as you start growing and it's expanding, there's always challenges. I'm not losing sleep over that. You know, I thrive on a challenge. I do believe that we've got a fantastic team. You know, but certainly our largest challenge in the near future is continuing to put the right people on the bus as we move this thing forward.
It's, the good people, the people that you need, of course. Well, it looks like you've done a good job of bringing some really highly qualified people on your staff, Jim, and I'm really looking forward to following this story for my subscribers, for myself as an investor, and really hope that we can talk to you some more. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we conclude our discussion today?
Well, I think the only thing is, you talked about the automotive industry. And we touched on stationary generators and shipping and rail. Buses are a huge market. It's interesting. I've had several talks with the largest bus remanufacturer here, just outside of Toronto, and he's telling me, he said, Jim, the city buses and the garbage trucks, he said their biggest challenge and it is because of carbon buildup, is downtime. I see and it's funny, I never ever noticed before. Now I see at least one city bus a day on the back of a tow truck.
Yes, I see it here in New York often as well.
And so they're very excited. This firm is very excited. They believe that, with our technology, it's going to make a huge change there.
Another market.
Jay, I'm out of the box, and I'm the first to admit it. But what keeps me up at night, I lay there and I know that with this technology, there is literally hundreds of opportunities and applications. I also know and understand, we've got to keep walking one step in front of the other. But as we move forward, I do believe that eventually we will be out of the manufacturing, but we will be moving into so many different verticals that this technology works with. Something that really excites me and has kept me awake at night, and I spent 2 years studying this. I come with an engineering background. I've talked to more engineers and more scientists and things. I feel without a shadow of doubt that we can take our technology and add it to coal-fired power plants to get them a significant reduction in their emissions. We're not there yet. This is very forward-looking, but I do believe that is a huge opportunity. I believe that that's something that can be a world changer. Like I said, I've been around a long time too. I've got 7 grandchildren. It's something that really, really is always heading on my mind. That I want to make sure that we leave this world a better place for our kids and our grandchildren. And I'm excited with what we're doing. I really do believe, and even with the government today, with our new government, our new Canadian government, they are here now knocking on our door because they see a huge opportunity. They've made some very bold statements how they're going to reduce the carbon footprint and things. I've got a technology that can help them do that drastically.
It's a really great story, Jim, and I'm really excited for you and for the company and for anybody who buys this stock in these levels. We hear a lot about Tesla. We haven't heard much about you. It seems to me that your company is probably in a position to do more than Tesla in a way, because what people aren't thinking about is that when you charge up the batteries for a Tesla, you're also requiring some fuel plant someplace to use up some fuel and to pollute the environment in that way. So it's not as if it's a zero or as if it's a win-win completely for a Tesla. So you guys have the potential to save on fuel consumption right away and reduce carbon emissions right away without this huge capital expenditure. So I think it's really a great story, and I want to thank you very much, Jim, for being with us. I look forward to doing it again sometime in the near future.
Jay, it was a real pleasure.